Mr. David Denning.
I'm going to, yes, thank you. So, of course we're here to celebrate this array, but it's far bigger than this. It's really about living on this planet in a sustainable and renewable way. And we've taken one little baby step. I remember when we first started off, we saw a neat video from a project in the US called Solar Schools. And it was children talking about the sun and about how the sun really gives us life. And one of the kids near the end of it said, well, it's like it was in front of us all the time, the answer to this, and we just didn't pay attention to it. And then he said, so we're working on it. We're creating these solar arrays, and we're doing it one little step at a time. And I think our step is a pretty big step for Salt Spring Island, but it's a little step for the world, but it's that step, and we need to keep doing those steps. So this is what we're celebrating today. And really the reason why we're celebrating this is if we don't start doing this in a big, big way, we're in trouble. And we know this. Everybody knows that climate change is the issue of our lives. This is kind of what has got us all together here in many ways, but also community and our values and the fact that we really do love each other and want to keep each other alive on this planet. And, you know, the awareness of climate change has grown immensely in the last few years. And when these very conservative economic agencies start publishing indications that the world is in real trouble, then people start paying attention. But I know most people here have been paying attention a lot longer than this, but now we have much more emphasis to do it, and we have the economics behind us, at least as far as these conservative groups are concerned. So we know now that we need to look ahead and see how much of that fossil fuel is needed to keep ourselves in a reasonable, sustainable solution until we could get off of these renewables. And this is the picture. 565 gigatons equivalent of CO2 would be allowed to keep the planet within 2 degrees Celsius. And the trouble is that already identified, there are about 5 times as much of that identified resources. So and of course that was 2010, and the data now we just keep going ahead. And so the fact is that 80% of the fossil fuel resources need to be kept in the ground. And we all know this, and so we need to get off of this fossil fuel. So let's stop that 80% from getting out of there. And so our project is just one step in that. But here's the picture of the future. We can do this. It's not something that's impossible. And the way in which we're going to get rid of fossil fuels, which is the big black glob on our society on the left, is to use more and more renewables, which includes solar, wind, hydro, geo, and somebody's moving it forward there a bit. Okay, I'll just focus. Okay. The transition was off the board, I guess. We do need to transition to a world without fossil fuels or very low reliance on fossil fuels. And so solar, wind, hydro, geo, those are all the things that they're increasing, and they will be increasing. Also, we need to be more efficient, and we've all started working on this in our homes and so forth. And just the fact that we'll change society from an internal combustion engine society to an electric motor society will help us. That's the wedge at the top. So this is technologically, last night, Sean McGee talked to us from Bullfrog, talked to us about how technologically we can do this right now. We have the technology, so let's see how we can do it socially and politically, make it happen. And so this is the first step. And here are 2 reasons why I really want this to happen. These are my 2 grandchildren, Rylan on the left, Kieran on the right. And every time I see them, I know that that's the right thing to do, is to work towards making this reduction of fossil fuels the thing. It is happening around the world. We can be very positive about it. This is a school in California. We're a little bit behind that particular school, as you can see. it is happening. It's happening at schools. The question is, why hasn't it been happening in Canada? And we all know there's a lot of complicated political, BC Hydro, local politics, especially in BC, that are sort of stumbling blocks to this. So it's time to overcome this, and I hope some of our speakers today can speak to that. A lot of this started about just over 2 years ago, and it started by a group called the Transition Salt Spring Group. And many of you in the audience here are members of that and have been from the start. I see a couple right in front of me here, Jean and Peter, John. Many people worked on Transition Salt Spring, the idea of this transition into a sustainable society built on renewables. And in 2013, they held a resilience fair, and it was a celebration of what was happening here on Salt Spring. And we have so much to celebrate, and we still do. We have things like a really great bus system that's improved. We have bicycle trails, we have pathways, we have an abattoir, we have lots of homegrown things. This needs to continue to expand, and we have Transition Salt Spring and all these groups working for that to happen. So we can be very proud of that, and we can continue to expand that as time goes on. That will help raise some of those wedges that are eliminating fossil fuels. About that time, a group of people got together with the purpose of looking at renewable energy and how we could integrate that into the community. And I joined this group, and these are the people right here on this, and I hope everyone will look at this and recognize the names, and if not, learn some of these names. These are people that have done a tremendous amount to create this solar project. They were the ones, this whole group of people. And they bring to our group an incredible amount of diversity of skills, knowledge. We have electrical engineers, we had NABCEP, this is North American certified installers of solar. We had capacity. We had people who have their own homes, who are very low, very high energy efficiency. All of that is part of this group. And what a lot of these folks in this group were a little shy, so somehow I ended up being a little bit more of the spokesman. But in any case, it was the entire group that really made this project happen. So first of all, I'd like to ask you to give an applause for this entire group of people. I don't know if I should ask them to stand up because they might be too shy, but I see John shaking his head no. So thank you, people. It's not all guys. Elizabeth White, who's really been working on renewable energy and transition on this island for, I'm not sure how many years, but it's more than 20 years. She's been amazing. So she's retired from our group, sadly, but she was fantastic. So this group got together and we did a lot of talking for about 7 or 8 months, planning, thinking, trying to figure out what would be a way to get the community to get behind renewable energy. And one of the thoughts we came up with was a community solar garden. So that's kind of in the background, working away there. I think it's in the boiling pot. It may come out in the future. But eventually, we decided that because of the political and jurisdictional issues, we couldn't work on that right away. So we went over to Souk, where there was a big community solar, and we had a chance to survey that. And unfortunately, Chief Gordon Plains, who was scheduled to talk to you today, can't make it, but he was the chief at the Souk Village, and I'd like to thank him for just inspiring us and his group over at Souk. So we did a lot more talking, and towards the end of 2013, I think we started to cogitate this idea. What about putting it on different buildings, putting an array on different buildings on the island? And my great friend and colleague, Kjell Lim came up with the idea, what about the school? And we talked about this, and eventually we came up, well, we could maybe do this project on the school and then tie it in with education a lot more carefully. So we looked at the school, and Chell did the calculations and found out that we could put about 20 kilowatts there. We came up with this idea that we could put an array there. Ken Danner did these wonderful drawings, and we came up with the idea that maybe we could put an array there. It'd be about $80,000. We could put it into the grid, and it could be a core of a larger project that would include education and an electric vehicle. And we had a little linchpin. We had a little thing that we thought would make it work. And that was because the community will support this if they know that the future is going to be brighter as a result of this. And so we came up with the idea of the Solar Scholarship. Change of computers here, it seems to have. This idea was that electricity produced by the array would go into the grid, and the money saved would go to the school system. So we took that to the students of the Environment Club, and we weren't just surprised, we were absolutely delighted, because the kids said, yes, this is the right idea. Some of those students are here, and they deserve a tremendous amount of thanks for this. But one of the things that's happened was, one of the students said, well, is there a way my parents could donate to this? Because I think they would want to. And then I said, well, actually, it's not a project yet. We have to take it to the school board. And they said, well, can we come to the school board meeting? And two or 3 days later, we went to the school board meeting. There were 5 students at that school board, and their teacher mentor, who's right here, Amy Cousins, she's right on the right here. And let me tell you, the school board presentation was a piece of cake, because all of those students spoke to the good idea of this, to the future, to renewable energies. They went through one by one and spoke to this. And the school board, before we got out of the room, had voted unanimously to support the project. So that was it. So that was the beginning of the Solar Scholarship Project, and we came up with various ideas, such as a hat, which represents a scholarship here, and it's got a solar panel on the top. So we went around town with these, I'm not sure if that, whoops, there's a front and a back, yes. We went around town with these for the next several months, so you probably saw us walking around town, just to remind people that this is what we're working on. And lots and lots of scheming, but the first thing about this was the school board said yes, and the district administration said yes. And so I want to put out a great thank you to the Gulf Islands School District 64 administration staff. They've been incredibly supportive, incredibly helpful, and Lisa Halstead from the superintendent is going to speak in just a little while. So anyway, can you give a warm applause for this? And that Transition Salt Spring group really stimulated a lot of things, including a really neat renewable energy conference in the spring. And there were 200 people at that conference, and it really just put together a cauldron, a boiling pot of ideas and discussions, and it just hasn't stopped. I think our community has really benefited from having these little preliminary events and having these discussions, and we're constantly involved with these discussions. So especially the committee, the education committee of the Transition Salt Spring, who helped us put this on, I'd like to thank you all for doing that. And what was really neat was there were just so many discussions. Here's a discussion about electric vehicles, and we have, I calculated a couple of weeks ago, if you look at a bigger picture, Salt Spring Island has a density of over 7 electric vehicles per 1,000 vehicles, which is higher than the state of California, which is the leader in North America otherwise. So we are leading in that place. And another thing that happened at that conference, and we were really excited and happy when this happened, was that, whoops, did I go through two there? Was that two students from the student body came and introduced the Solar Scholarship Project. And for them to do that was really meant a lot to us and to our community, because it really said, okay, we can work together on this. And so Sky Losier and Keenan Nowak are in this picture, and I'm really happy to say that Sky's come back from wherever he is out in that world to speak with us today too, so he'll be here. So thank you two guys, and for all the students. And in fact, that's what I wanted to bring up here. Here's some names of most of the students I could immediately remember. There were other students, and I apologize for not getting their names on it, but the students have been very helpful throughout the things. So I think we should thank the community, the Environment Club for that work. And another announcement was made at that community renewable energy group that really had a tremendous effect on our abilities to carry out this project. Two wonderful people, Vince and Maggie Argiro, made a donation that was a matching grant donation. And it was a large sum of money. And they said that that grant would be good until July 1st. They would match all the donations up to that level of the grant by July 1st. So that set us in stage. We already had a bunch of money as long as other people donated, so it was really terrific. So they stimulated the economics of this. So Vince and Maggie, I'd like to thank you for, I don't know if they're out here. And then the fundraising committee went to work, and this included myself, John, Chell, Ron, two wonderful people that worked in the nitty-gritty of helping to get the communications and the design out, and wonderful posters, lots of communication on social media and so forth. Those were Andrea Palferman and Bridget Hayes, and then our own Ann Parkinson looked after all the donations and organized that. So this group is the group that went ahead and went for the goal of $60,000. And I have a little bit report in a minute, but thank you all for working on that, so thank you. We also applied at the same time for grants. Salt Spring Island Foundation gave us a $5,000 grant, so that was raising the bar at that time. So over the next little while, up until July 1st, we did campaigning, and on July 1st, at an event right down in the schoolyard down here, we were able to have a check turned over. And I'm not sure what Vince is saying there, but it obviously was very funny. And we got them, everybody laughing. And that was one of the first big chunks of money, and it included donations from our own Elizabeth May, Gary Holman. It also included, if I can read that on here, I might have to take my glasses off, PharmaSave, and the Liberal Party as well. So this was fantastic series, and that was a great milestone, July 1st. But we still had somewhere in the neighborhood of over 30,000 to do. So about this time, somebody came up with the idea, let's fund a panel. Let's have a fund a panel campaign. And here you see a panel going up there. And people rose to the occasion. And many people have done that. Probably many in this audience have donated at least $750 and funded a panel. And when you go by that school, I'm sure you're looking up there and you see your panel, right? You can see it up there. That's your panel. Don't let anybody tell you different. And so I want to thank everybody who donated, but especially those people who now have the ability to say, that's my panel. Chell was telling me that they didn't have any marking pens up there at the time, so they couldn't put your name on your panel. So you're just going to have to remember which one is yours. But thank you all, those of you who did donate a panel, and everybody who donated. And then, as we were approaching the end of the campaign, Bullfrog Power, and Sean McGee was here last night to give a talk. They threw another $20,000 grant at us, and it was actually stimulating just the last bit of our funding campaign, we were closing in on our community goal, and they just really stimulated that. So thank you, Bullfrog Power, for doing that. Oops, went backwards. A lot of things go backwards. Oh, there's Sean right there. Okay, and as near the end there, many businesses came up. These businesses came up to the plate, and many of them donated an entire panel. So a lot of these businesses will have plaques which say, okay, your panel number 433. There were some great stories. I just want to recognize these businesses and to thank them, because that really made a big difference in our funding campaign. So thank you, Country Grocer, right through the Windsor Plywood, all of these people, thank you. And there are some great stories along the way of organizations that donated. You'll notice right away, Raging Grannies is on there. We have this great organization, Salt Spring Trail and Nature. The GIS class reunion group had a dance, and the money left over for that came to the Solar Scholarship. The Only Planet Cabaret did a performance. They made $1,000 and gave it to this project. There have been tremendous stories behind this thing. And then, of course, you notice there's some political parties here, and they were competing against each other, so that was really great. So all of those three political parties, the NDP, the Greens, and the BC Liberal Party, thank you to all these groups. Let's have an applause for all these guys. The upper part there got scrunched a bit. Thank you to over 100 personal donors, many of whom did donate a whole panel. You've all made a tremendous difference. There's stories behind all of those donations too. I'd love to share them, but I'd just like to collectively thank everybody who donated. It really is how we made this happen, so thank you. So I'm so proud, we were so proud to say that we had raised the funds, that in October, and it's unbelievable that in October, late in October, we were finally able to say, well, we've raised the funds needed for this, $60,000. And so Chell and I and two of the students, Jenna and Ella, went out, and Ron took a picture. And by the way, Ron Watts is our photographer, and he deserves a tremendous amount of credit for doing this. I want to say thank you. And Ron, these pictures, most of them are from Ron, so he's done great throughout the thing. He's a professional photographer, and he gives all that time to this. We really wanted to be able to say we did it, but in fact, there was something still missing, which was the panel. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Chell. In just 1 second, I'm going to turn it over to Chell to talk to you about that. But I want to mention, just in closing here, that we're not stopped now that when we pull the switch on this, we're not stopped. It's the beginning. And what we need is education. We need all of our community to become more educated. But one of our goals is to put more education in the schools. So that's coming. You can look forward to that. We'll try to report on that as we go. Maybe in a year we'll have a celebration about that aspect of it as well. What we need is to change the culture, the fossil fuel culture that we now have, where this is the norm. Everybody thinks this is okay. It's the normal thing to do. We need to change that. And the only way we can do that is through education. Education that reaches all of us in the community and all of our students. So that's our next goal. So I think right now I'd like to open it up to my really good friend and colleague, Chell Lim, who can tell you a lot about how it happened.